Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. As the war in Ukraine marks 4 years since the full-scale invasion by Russia, reconstruction estimates in the country have risen to over $588 billion over the next decade. Also, the human cost of the war in Ukraine continues to deepen. Conflict has shifted from an acute emergency to long-term strain, with infrastructure under attack and civilians carrying much of the burden. 3.7 million people are internally displaced. On the ground in Ukraine is Helena, spokesperson for the Polish Humanitarian Action. She speaks with us today. Thanks for joining us here on TVP World.
Thank you very much.
All right, I just want to give some context. You are in Ukraine at the moment. You're in Kyiv. You've just come through this tour through the country at a moment that's very, very pivotal for the country. Tell us a little bit from the greatest takeaways, what you've seen. How is that humanitarian situation on the ground today?
So the humanitarian situation is very diverse. From one point of view, you can say that in many places it improved because, yes, that is true. The needs became more long-term, as you said at the beginning. But other places are still in utter need of humanitarian aid and very, very quick humanitarian aid. I have seen many people who evacuated from places like Sloviansk, Druszkivka, from Kramatorsk in Donetsk Oblast, and they needed basically everything, anything. They needed hygiene support, they needed financial support. They came with maybe 1 bag, 2 bags, 1 backpack, and that's it. And they don't have a home to come back to. And same in Kharkivska Oblast, people who stayed in the villages around Kharkiv or even 2 hours from Kharkiv, they experience the attacks from drones every night, and they experience also ballistic attacks. And it also goes for the main cities, like, for example, Kharkiv. The lights go on and off. Part of the city doesn't have heating. The temperatures were very brutal. It was like -11, -12 during the night, sometimes during the day. So it is really relevant for the city this big as Kharkiv to have heating, to have electricity, of course, to have access to water. But somehow, and I don't know how, but somehow the life goes on. People survive. The society didn't collapse. And we are 4 years in this full-scale war in the whole terrain of Ukraine. And still, somehow, this country prevails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a kind of a definition of resilience that many of us cannot even begin to understand. But I want to ask you a little bit more about, tangibly, when you started this work, if we're looking back 4 years ago to 2022, I mean, I can imagine a lot of those were immediate emergency supplies, food, you name it. What right now is the immediate need? Are you seeing this as it's covered for 4 years? What do people need right now?
So in some places, like, as I mentioned, the frontline or isolated places, isolated locations, towns, villages, still the needs are very urgent in very basic form, like food, like hygiene packages, like need of evacuation, even the fuel to have something to pour into generators, or even some medicines. But in other places, a big need, for example, is help after the shellings, because even if the drone didn't hit your building, then the impact of it hitting the ground would destroy all your windows, your balconies, your doors. So you need this emergent support after the shelling. Also, financial support. Many people lost the ability to support themselves because they had to move. They had to, well, they cannot perform their career anymore. And then I think psychological support, because a lot of people, I would say everybody here, lives in trauma. A lot of people experience the post-traumatic stress disorder, and you can see it, it's palpable. But well, no wonders after 4 years. And I think we have to focus very much on children, because children are the future of the country. And the way it's going now, I see they can become the lost generation because of the way they've been, in or with outside of education system, without the support of, psychologists, without the support of this society around. If you had to move, if you had to go through the border, or you have to move to another city, you lose this kind of a social pillow that you can fall onto. So I think that we have to focus on the children.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that displacement as well. I mean, one of the numbers we just shared, it's about 3.9 million internally displaced Ukrainians, and many of those will also be children. I mean, that's the kind of size of, let's say, almost, I think, the size of Berlin as a whole city, maybe even roughly that size around Ukraine. We've got about, I think, 5.9 million displaced outside of Ukraine, but internally. Tell us a bit more. I mean, where are the movements here? Are they going back to certain places in the West? Are they moving from bigger, smaller towns? Are they constantly on the move? What does that look like? I mean, just this constant displacement. And tell us the effects of that.
So the number might be the 3.7, but it's not a reality. In real life, people are moving all the time. It's constant. So there are people who move to west of Ukraine and they are coming back to their cities. There are people who are moving in and out of the cities that are on the front line, being evacuated, coming back. Some people don't want to be evacuated, so it's a forced evacuation for their own good. But yes, they come back when they can. I even saw people coming back and heard about people coming back to places like Izium. And sorry to say, but it's a very, very difficult place to live. I was there, and 2 hours after we left, there was an attack exactly in the city center. There are nets over the roads that are preventing the drones hitting the main roads, but not the smaller roads. So, but people come back to these places because they are just... They miss their homes. They want to be back in their place. They want to be back with their neighbors. They want to be back in the place where they belong. So it's no wonder. But also there are people who are moving from places like Khersonska, Mykolaiivska, or Zaporizhia Oblast, and they are moving into bigger cities, but as close as possible to home. So, for example, moving from Khersonska Oblast to Mykolaiv, moving from Zaporizhia maybe to Dnipro, or from Donetsk Oblast to Dnipro. So they are trying to stay as close as possible. Whereas at the beginning of this full-blown escalation, we would see people running away as far away as possible from the front line. But now people want to be as close as possible to be able to go back, to be able to rebuild whenever it's possible.
And speaking about rebuilding, when we see these terrible images, they're on the screen right now. I mean, this has become a daily reality. A lot of civilian homes being destroyed, apartment blocks being struck. If we look at also these numbers, which people are hard to really fathom, $588 billion over the next decade. I mean, that's a number no one can... It's hard to imagine that sort of number. If we're looking at the immediate aftermath of destruction, how do people rebuild? Are you saying they're coming closer back home? Is that temporary shelters? Are they to go right back to rebuilding? How dangerous is that generally?
So they come as close as possible. What I mean is they are living in locations nearby, but then if it's possible, they come back and try to somehow repair the windows, repair the rooftop, repair the walls, and move back. But in some cases, like we see on the screen right now, it's not possible because the building is too dangerous to move in. But for example, I was on the left bank of Kyiv yesterday, 2 days ago, and I met a person who was sitting in the invincibility point in a tent. And she said, this is my building, the drone hit here. And still people live there because, well, they have nowhere to go. They just repaired the windows. They put this kind of plaques to cover the covers on the windows, and they still live there. And you can also see people, for example, moving into some kind of like a summer kitchen. So a small buildings outside of their house if the house is somehow affected by the shelling. So there are many different ways to deal with that. But unfortunately, even if your house is still standing, you can experience such a huge shelling around, or you are cut off from the main services like water, like electricity, like heating, and it's just unbearable to live there. So people have to move. But as I said, they go and go back, go and go back.
And also, I'm curious about, with the kind of work that you've done, also with the kind of work that Polish Humanitarian Action has done, obviously 4 years, that's quite some time. How has that relationship changed, coordination-wise, connection? Let's say that if someone wants to now help more, how does one do that? Someone watching in Poland or the US or abroad, how does that happen?
We, as Polish Humanitarian Action, have been active in Ukraine since 2014, and of course, our work changed since 2022. And the main thing that we would expect for a person who would like to support our work is the financial support, because then we can react to sudden crises like the one we had this winter, that we had to buy generators, heaters, etc. for Kyiv and other cities. And also we have funds for long-term projects, such as rebuilding of Ukraine. If the war ends tomorrow, it would not, but we have to be prepared also for longer-term projects. And if somebody is watching from Poland, we are now in tax season, so you can give PAH, the Polish Humanitarian Action, 1.5% of your taxes, and this support costs nothing. And wherever there is a person or a company that would like to support us with, for example, generators or heaters or other kind of items that we currently need, please contact us and become our business partner. We are awaiting your call.
All right, so there's definitely a need there. I want to also ask you about your own personal anecdote, if I may. I mean, security, obviously, this is a danger, this is a war zone. How much does security factor in this for you? Have you had any, let's say, close calls? What do you feel about working there and putting your own life at risk?
We are prepared to work in war zones. We are trained and we are assessed by psychologists. We have all the medical checkups and we also have briefings. And if we know that we shouldn't go somewhere, we just don't go. We stop the distributions for our own good and for the good of beneficiaries that receive our support. But of course, there are some, maybe not close calls, but there are moments of concerns. For example, this year, last week, I've been to one of the villages around Kharkiv, so very close to the city. And while I was talking to one of our beneficiaries who received wood pellets from us, we heard a drone very, very close by, basically above the nearby buildings. So we had to take cover. And same in Kharkiv, basically, when you live there, even temporarily, you hear the explosions sometimes every night, sometimes every 2-3 nights. So this happens. So people who have to work in this kind of places, especially Ukrainians, and most of our staff in Ukraine are Ukrainians, they are prepared to work in this condition, but it doesn't get easier with the time.
It doesn't get easier, but as you said, it's something that is absolutely required right now with resilient people. People are doing that, and I think there's much more to do. Let's hope for more calmer days ahead. Thanks so much for all that. Sharing your story there, Helena Krajewska, spokesperson, Polish Humanitarian Action. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.